5 different movements, and they have their list of demands, which basically are more or less the same demands that they had for the past 13 days. The removal of President Mubarak, constitutional changes, among others, and also the release of all the detainees that have been picked up since all this started. And I think at some point they want to have some sort of guarantee by the government that their own security is not at stake if they pull out from the square, if they give space for negotiation and politics to play out. What are the guarantees that they're not going to be picked up and detained and that the same old system will still be functioning?
Do they believe that those people we saw in the meeting with Omar Suleiman are speaking for them or not?
That is something that is not very clear. We do know that they held talks with several of these people who offered to represent them, like the wise men or the Dr. Al-Baradei. But do they officially represent them? I don't think we're at that stage yet.
Thanks very much indeed. Another of our correspondents in Alexandria. And last time we spoke, you said the crowd, big crowd, was going to move off towards the main train station. Well, I don't know whether you can hear me. I'm going to try once again, talking to our correspondent in Alexandria. We see pictures of massive crowds. Have they yet begun to move off, as you suggested they would, towards the Alexandria train station?
Yes, David, that crowd has left. Thousands of pro-democracy demonstrators are marching through the streets of Alexandria now as we speak towards the main train station. There has been some rainfall which has caused the numbers to dwindle slightly. However, they're still in the thousands, maybe 2,000 or 3,000 marching through the streets towards Sidi Gaber train station. The same march that we've been seeing for several days now. Not the same in size, maybe because of weather, maybe because things have come to normal to a certain extent here in Alexandria. However, there is still the loud chanting, there is still the slogans of down, down with Mubarak, and the people demand the collapse of the regime. It seems there are still significant numbers, to say the least, of pro-democracy, anti-government protesters who are willing to be brave intimidation or brave the bad weather to continue in their quest for the removal or the ousting of the president, David.
We were just talking to one of your colleagues who's in Tahrir Square, and she says that those protesters there have decided to form a coalition of 5 different movements to draw up their demands and then present them to the government. Do you see some kind of organisation appearing with the people in Alexandria as well?
Well, to be honest, David, these unprecedented anti-government demonstrations started in Cairo, and that is where everything is being spearheaded. It is in Tahrir that the vast majority, or the largest numbers, rather, have been able to mobilize, and it is through Tahrir and through Liberation Square that the world was made to listen. So the people here in Alexandria, the same as those in Suez or Mahalla or other places, take their directive in one way or another from those in Cairo. So there isn't any meeting between the protesters here and government officials. A lot of people here actually, they watch television, particularly Al Jazeera, to try and find any news of what those in Cairo, what those in the capital have agreed or failed to do so, whatever may be the case. So whilst there are leaderships who manage to mobilize crowds here in terms of negotiations or in terms of presenting demands, that is in all matter of fact usually done or has been done through Cairo.
Thanks very much for now. And as we take a look at those pictures in Alexandria and in Cairo, and as it's suggested that the mood certainly in Tahrir Square has become quite festive, and we see the flag waving and the cheering and hear the music in Alexandria, it is worth reflecting on the fact that it was only a couple of days ago that the scenes on the streets were particularly violent. And here at Al Jazeera we've received some pictures which do appear to show scenes of the intense fighting which was in Cairo, central Cairo, last Wednesday night. We've also got pictures of similar scenes in Alexandria a little bit earlier than that. A warning, this report by Alan Fisher has got some very violent images which you may find disturbing.
This is central Cairo on Wednesday night. After a day of running battles between pro and anti-Mubarak supporters, the two sides face off again on a bridge near Liberation Square. Gunshots can be clearly heard. Rocks and petrol bombs are thrown. As the shots continue, people seem unmoved, but as they get closer and more sustained, they begin to duck. The camera finds a man laid out on the ground, his friends trying to lift him. A hand goes up, almost pleading for time for the shooting to stop. But more shots ring out, and two more people fall to the ground. If we watch in slow motion, at the bottom of the screen, there are bright flashes where it appears the bullets hit the metal rail of the bridge. These people are anti-government protesters. They claim the shots came from the army. Al Jazeera has no way of confirming their allegations. As those on the bridge run, trying to get a safe distance away, others drag those who fell from the scene. This video has now emerged on YouTube. It's dated 28th of January, when there were protests in Alexandria. As this man approaches what appears to be police, a single shot is fired. We have no way of knowing if the man survived. The Egyptian authorities say 11 people have been killed in the unrest across the country. The United Nations says it's more than 300. Alan Fisher, Al Jazeera.
They're a very, very vivid reminder of just how dangerous it has been on the streets of Cairo, on Alexandria, and indeed in many other of the main cities and towns in Egypt. I'm going to repeat an appeal that we're making this hour for the release of one of our correspondents, Ayman Mohyeddin. Been doing a lot of work over the course of the last 2 weeks on the events in Egypt, and Ayman has been detained by the Egyptian army. Detained by the Egyptian army near Tahrir Square in Cairo, and we are calling for his immediate release, and we'll keep you updated on any developments. Let's talk to Hossam Barkat, Executive Director of the Egyptian Initiative for Personal Rights. Mr. Barkat, without going into the details of Ayman's case, it's an illustration of just how difficult and dangerous it has been for the hundreds, if not thousands, of journalists who are trying to get this story out to the rest of the world.
You're absolutely right. I mean, since Friday, the 28th of January, what we have been witnessing is clearly a pattern of attacks on journalists, particularly targeting foreign journalists who are under less constraints by the regime, of course, in their reporting. But this pattern intensified and was transformed into a concerted campaign since last Wednesday. And despite the repeated denials of the new Prime Minister, the Vice President, and other regime officials that there are no instructions to go after foreign journalists and harass them, what we are seeing, even before the arrest of Mr. Mohyeddin, is that this atmosphere and pattern of targeting of independent journalists continues. And what is perhaps less known to the world outside is that this pattern does not only target foreign journalists. We are also seeing now Egyptian journalists being detained. But the reason we are extremely concerned is that for the first time now we have evidence that it is the army that is actually making these arrests. These detentions are not happening by the neighborhood watch committees and not by the Egyptian police, but by the army itself, which is a very dangerous precedent that needs to stop immediately.
Do you get the feeling that the units which are taking these journalists are acting independently, perhaps, or are they acting under instructions from much higher up?
Of course, now in the current circumstances, it is very difficult to trace decisions back to who actually authors these decisions. But this just cannot be a disjoint coincidence of all these incidents of detention, of harassment, and again, like I said, because it's the army that is now conducting this, it is impossible for the regime to come back and say these are army officers that were acting independently. There is a chain of command here that is very clear, and that is why we are really concerned